Hello and welcome to This Week in X. We are here to discuss Marauders issue number 16 out on the 9th of December, 2020. This is your spoiler warning. We're going to talk about everything there is to talk about in this issue, in other issues out this week, in the entire Marvel Universe historically from 1961 Fantastic Four number 1 until now. So you have been warned that there are spoilers, and I'm so happy to be joined here by my co-hosts Tyler and Harry to dig deeply into This Week in X. First things first, what did we think about this issue of Marauders? I have many opinions, but as we do, let's start with Tyler and then move to Harry and see what your first impressions were.
I mean, I really enjoyed this. I mean, this is what we have been waiting to have for it to happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, there was a long interlude in human time, but I think in Krakoan time is probably just a couple of days delay. So, but we can talk about it a little bit more. But I really, really enjoyed this.
Harry?
Yeah, I felt this was maybe the most satisfying issue since the status quo kicked off, because we have been waiting for this for some time. And, we've had a lot of buildup, a lot of kind of like pieces being put into play, not just in Marauders, but in all these series. But this is the issue that felt like finally things are coming to a head in one of these big books. And Marauders has always been, to me, a cut above than the others. And we're finally getting to some payoff and some certain people getting what they had coming to them.
I do agree that this is probably the biggest payoff issue that we've had. We've had a lot of issues kind of setting up new things from Hickman, a lot of mysteries continued in terms of Mystique and Destiny, but this feels like one of the first times that we've just had a really solid payoff of something since we've been in Dawn of X, and it's very satisfying because everybody loves to hate Sebastian Shaw, and everybody loves to love Kate Pryde, especially when she and Emma are teaming up. So I think in that way, it was really good, but I did get a little, it almost felt like slapstick to me after a while. Like they just kept knocking him over and knocking him down. It started to feel like a Three Stooges to me. And I think that there are certain people who really will enjoy that because they just like the rhythm of it. And I think Duggan gave it a great rhythm. I think some people potentially could eye roll a little bit. Like it took a whole issue. They just kept kicking him when he was down. It really has to do if you like Shaw being kicked while he's down, really. I think that's where your enjoyment of this issue probably rests. I don't know. That's just me.
It is also part of the norm in a modern comics, right? Where things are very decompressed. So you focus on just one thing and one thing only, and then you just milk it for as much as you can. And in this case, I think it's kind of worth it.
Let's start out just with the one-page scene that we begin with here, which is Bishop and Storm. And they've kind of both come to the conclusion about who murdered Kate at the same time in their own way, which I think hints at some other things that may be still to come here. I don't know. Tyler, what did you think about that?
I'm actually pleasantly surprised that Storm actually figured it out already. And, when she flew down to Bishop, she's like, and Bishop showed her this thing, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, I knew it was Shaw who did it." And maybe when Bishop showed her that Vine thing, and she's like, this just confirms my suspicions. And but part of me thinks that did Kate and Emma actually tell her as well? In some ways, for this whole issue to pay off, there is this last scene. And they probably need Storm to be on their side for that scene to really work. And it also plays very well into the mother and daughter relationship between Kate and Aurora. What do you think, Harry?
I just thought it was nice to kind of get more of a look at the other players on this team. I think this is a really great book, but sometimes it can kind of get tunnel vision with just being about Kate, Emma, and Shaw. So showing that the other side and other group people in the group have their own autonomy, are figuring things out as they go. I did wonder near the end of the issue if they had talked to Aurora ahead of time and kind of set that. I mean, if they had kind of revealed things early, but yeah, it was just a cool beat to kind of set the stage and remind you what's going to be happening soon enough.
Yeah, I guess I didn't put too much thought into how Aurora would know, just because I kind of feel like she would want to know either way, whether she chased down the vines because she was there in the funeral and maybe would have seen them on the body, or whether she would have just known the vines immediately, or whether she would have asked. Kind of like doesn't really matter to me, because what matters to me is that she is angry. Maybe she's the fourth angriest person / being after Kate, Emma, and Lockheed, but she's pissed. But the other thing was that I appreciated here was kind of like bringing Bishop and Storm in on it. I'm not really interested in the playing for gags that the rest of the cast doesn't know that Shaw killed Kate for like issues and issues. It just felt like that would just drag on. I think it's fine if like Pyro and Iceman don't know to like make a gag out of it once or twice, but I think it could have got a little tiresome if we were like constantly stringing along, like when will Storm find out? Like it just was way more satisfying to just do it right up front and know that going into the issue, I thought.
But I think even at this point, no one knows that Frost's brother is the White Bishop is actually involved in this as well.
Yeah, that's true. No hints of that.
Yeah.
I almost wondered if with that first interaction that maybe like they almost seemed so out for blood that they might like actually kill Shaw or something much more severe that could maybe clash with whatever Kate and Emma were planning. And I thought that kind of gave it some tension later in the issue where I wasn't sure where it was going to go and who was kind of come out on top. And then it's revealed later that everyone's pretty much on the same page about how to handle this guy. So.
Well, especially when Storm basically like kicks down the door in the middle of it. You're like, oh no.
Like, oh no.
I want to dig into the kind of series of cheap shots. We don't need to spend 10 minutes discussing each one, but I just want to take us through them and see if people have reactions to some and to not others. So the first is, of course, the big one to kill Shaw from Kate at the beginning right through the door, which is funny not only because it pays off the tattoos, but because as Shaw immediately comments, he's like, I'm immune to physical damage. Like he's always so confident about this. And we very quickly, get a subversion of that. So I don't know, how satisfying was it to just see him get 2 bops in the nose from Kate right at the start there?
Very. No, it just felt so good, right? I mean, you've been watching this guy scheme and maneuver, and finally it's just brought to a head literally with just these 2 fists. And I mean, I think Stefano Caselli really, really brought it with that page in particular. Just like the expression on Shaw's face as he gets hit the second time and you see the blood fly off and you just realize like how visceral this is going to get very quickly.
And I kind of like the entrance that, Kate and Emma made through the door with
hand in hand.
Emma. Yeah. And, the poise and the expression on the 2 characters, I thought that was pretty perfect. But I did notice the same thing as I think Peter noticed as well. Kate's hair.
Yeah, well, there's a few. I don't want to go into nitpick zone here, but we have been getting curly-haired Kate on the cover, and there was some indication in the last issue before X of Swords began that like Kate was kind of resurrected, feeling more like herself than ever before, and that we were going to get curly hair Kate to signify that. And then as Caselli draws her straight hair here, I have to admit I was confused for a second. Like, where did this she's especially because she's shot from below, so she looks really tall, which she's not, and she's got these like high cheekbones, which she doesn't usually have, and then the straight hair and a bang. And I just was like, is this even Kate Pryde? I thought maybe it was like a decoy or something. And I kind of felt like you two complimented Caselli, but I feel like he was kind of like rushed or a little bit off here.
Really?
I didn't feel like the figures have this sort of like heft and glowiness that they often do. I feel like some of the poses were awkward. Some of the faces seemed really rushed. I don't know. I felt like I got taken out of it a lot, but if you two liked it, it could have just been like some kind of thing that pesters me. But I really couldn't settle into the art in this issue.
I definitely noticed the hair was different. I can't speak to the postures as much, but I did recognize that it wasn't the curly hair that we had just been kind of introduced to. But just the intensity of emotion on all of their faces throughout the issue, that was kind of like, I think that's what he's really good at. Just very, very severe kind of looks. And I think that kind of added a lot to the emotion of the scene.
Well, the other thing, I think Peter might have been spoiled by P.P. Lara's art, where I think the composition of the page is a little bit more dynamic than what we see here. So this is more straightforward, this panel, go to this panel, to this panel, and pretty much all of them are rectangular in shape. So, I mean, maybe that is, but then, expression-wise, I kind of agree with Harry. I do not see the expression as being off too much. I do agree with Peter that in some cases the posture looks a little bit weird and strained, so it doesn't look too natural.
Well, I'll say this, and then we can move on with the slapstick. Is because we don't want to just say like I like the art, I don't like the art. Part of why we crush on comics is that we can get a little bit deeper than that level. As I think about it, he chose 3 very complex outfits to be drawing them in. Kate's is like a shirt that's belted with a jacket that's over top of it. And so he has to constantly show kind of the folds in the jacket and the way that it moves around her body. Emma is in pants with like a tuxedo vest, which if you think about how it wears literally on somebody that's, a woman, that it fits kind of awkwardly around their chest because that's not usually how tuxedo stuff works. And he, from a tailoring perspective, doesn't kind of draw in the kind of darts that would have to be on a physical version of this. And so he's got to keep drawing these like gathers at the side of her body. And over time, I felt like he was spending more time on this stuff than the other. And then Shaw, who's in his beautifully large faux collar, but it almost makes him look physically smaller, which I actually think was probably intentional given the beating that he's taken here. But again, like it just made me feel like in the panel, sometimes he wasn't taking up enough space. So I don't know, maybe it's not even me saying that things were drawn weirdly. Maybe it's just me saying like, wow, Caselli gave himself a really hard task here. And I found like I was really taken with the minutia of the task, maybe a little bit more than the character performances that the two of you noticed and were clearly on the page.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, what I liked about this is how much of the issue is really just in one room of a house. And it kind of just has all of this detail in it and all of these small little objects and things. And but in that same environment, it just causes you to focus more on the 3 characters that are having this conversation and subsequent beatdown. And I thought that's not an easy thing to do, for an artist. And I think he just kind of did it very well.
Yeah, it felt like a fully realized space. Like you had a sense of like where the shelf was, where the chair was, even as the camera begins to rotate a little bit and there's a window and then he later goes through the window. I do think it had a fantastic sense of 3-dimensional space that was really well established.
Yeah.
Well, Shaw makes this claim of like, I'm physically impervious, it's only going to make me stronger. And immediately Emma whips out a gun, which is, I think, a really fun beat because Emma Frost, like you expect her to turn to Diamond or to use her mental powers or whatever, but she knows Shaw better than anybody. And she's like, you've got to do the unexpected here. And so she just, blam, gets him, which I think itself was a really funny beat.
It's so nice just to cut through all of his posturing real fast. Like, I'm just going to shoot you. Like, we're going to do this real quick and keep it moving.
Yeah.
And it keeps him off kilter and you as well, as you're like, what is going to happen next? Because, this X-Man has a gun.
Yeah. I was racking my brain to see, to think of like, oh, what could that thing be? And I went back to X-Men number 3. Where the garden grannies, the horticulture, but I prefer the garden grannies.
Yeah, garden grannies
better,
is how they're going to be known.
Yeah. they did almost the exact same thing as as Emma, Kate, and later Storm did. Like basically, they shot his face with the green stuff, which makes him unable to use his power, and then he fell to the ground, and they start kicking him. So it's kind of similar to the beating that he gets here, except that of course he recovered, from the beating. But in this case, well, something else happens.
So as the beatdown continues, right, Shaw is beside himself and he's getting increasingly more frustrated. We have this wonderful little panel of Kate almost in small font, right, in an aside, which makes it even funnier. Says, perhaps men are too emotional to lead. Which I just love because it's the kind of thing Shaw would say all the time on the council, especially given Shaw's reaction to Jean at the end of X of Swords to get her off the council. It felt like Kate getting Shaw back for that to me, which made it even more satisfying.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the other thing also, in a way, is that Hellfire's Club has always sort of not treat the female members with the same dignity as the male members, right? Because they always dress them in these tight corsets and stuff like that. So in this case, you know, with having the thing reversed and having Kate telling him, say, well, maybe you are the one that is too emotional. And then of course, you know, she went on and say that and do the drinking the whiskey and spitting it into the fire thing and say, I'm Lockheed and things like that. So I mean, kind of funny, but
that entire interaction, starting with that line and her just drinking and spitting in the flames, just feels like such a Jerry Duggan moment. Like, definitely, I kind of feel like his voice is coming out the most in that, which can be a good and bad thing. I think it mostly works here, where you just kind of, you can tell exactly where the writer is and what he's trying to say with the subtext there, or it may just text at that point with the gender dynamics. But yeah.
And so Shaw briefly makes his escape, gets dragged back in through the door by Kate with Glob looking on.
He's fun. Jerry Duggan's funny. That's a really, really good page of like just her just dragging him back inside, and you see Glob running away in fear.
Yeah.
It's just really funny.
And the thing is that Glob did not even like. I mean, he had one line, you know, or two, you know. Oh my gosh, are you okay, Mr. Shaw? And then Kate is like, hi, goodbye. And then,
it's funny. It's funnier because you don't even know where he came from or why he's outside the mansion.
Why is he down there? Like,
I don't want an explanation. I like that he's just kind of standing there.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And so they bring him back in. There is a great moment with Emma slapping Shaw, which she can do since he doesn't have his powers turned on, and call her Kate, which I can't say that mentally I didn't connect a little bit to Elliot Page, who plays Kate Pryde in the movies. And, you know, the media has been doing a decent job at not dead naming Elliot as they're reporting on his identity as a transgender man. And so it just was like a nice life and art reflection. A lot of people had pointed out the connection that even though it's just Kitty giving up a nickname to become Kate, that it definitely reflects upon the way that people take on names in the real world and the avoidance of dead naming them. And it just was a nice little moment for Emma there that I think has extra resonance because of what's been happening in the world over the past week or two. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
I mean, for me, I thought it was more, it was like Emma giving Kate a little bit more agency.
Yeah.
And not just like a little girl playing grown up, you know, like, you know, when, you know, like maybe a 8-year-old is like, no, don't call me honey anymore. Call me by my name, you know, that kind of thing. So I thought it plays pretty well into that too. So
I thought it was great. It was just such this moment of affirmation and just kind of like, it just solidifies this new kind of stage in this character's life. You know, I thought it was like one of my favorite parts of the issue.
And then we come full circle to what we teased at the beginning, which is Storm coming in the door with Lockheed. Now, Lockheed, not always the fiercest of dragons, actually quite a cuddly dragon usually, but you do not mess with Lockheed's Kate. And especially you don't kill her in front of Lockheed. So even, I mean, not to get deep into the characterization of a dragon who rarely speaks on panel, but this, for a second, I was like, would he? And then I said, he would, because he would.
Well, the funny thing is I just read the Sword mini, or the short-lived Sword series, which has Lockheed without Kate around, and he becomes this like hard drinking, like sort of angry like dragon who's going to mess up a room if it comes to it. So it actually does track for this dragon's characterization that he's going to mess someone up.
Yeah. And for me, I thought it was funny that Sebastian needs a reflection to determine that he's maimed. I mean, he got his eye gouged out. Like, what else? I mean, besides maimed, would he be like? He'll be. Well,
he might.
Pretty?
You know, I did take it as like a vanity moment. Like, you took my eye, but until I can get resurrected, at least am I still pretty? You know, that is 100% how I read that.
Of course, as soon as he loses the eye, he looks at his reflection. Like, obviously, that's what this guy would do. That page is great, by the way. Just the silhouettes of Lockheed and Shaw just getting his eye yanked out. It was really like very brutal. I think I'd like it hit me when I was reading it the first time.
And so we arrive now at what I think is actually the most interesting part of this issue, which I will call Shaw's trio of impossible choices. because he can make his treachery, and some of these, you have to understand, we all outline this as if with academic rigor. So when I say these things, it's not always because I'm smart. It's usually because Tyler's smart. So Harry too, but Tyler does a lot of the outlining.
It's the truth.
So the three choices here are that he can make his treacheries publicly known, which, as Emma puts it, will put him in the pit with Sabretooth, a pillow for Victor, which is probably my second favorite line.
Brutal.
In the issue. They can keep things private and basically give the quartet of them the power over his life and death. Or I guess he could kill himself, but Storm has got an iron boot on that resurrection process.
Yeah.
And she makes very clear he will be at the back of the line. So Tyler, what did you think about the brutal three choices for Shaw?
I mean, I thought it was really perfect because he did not give Lockheed or Kate any choices.
Right.
And in fact, Kate begged him to not kill Lockheed. And Kate is like, I'm going to give you my seat. I'm going to give you my vote. Don't kill him. He ignored her and he killed both of them. So in this case, I thought it's just perfect. It's even more perfect than the beating he got, right? It would be like, the three of them could just stroll in and poison him, and then we jump to these three choices and it would still work. The revenge would still work for me.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it on that level, just between the interactions there. But it was so satisfying because it's not like been a huge concern of mine, but I have been thinking, where does all of this scheming with Shaw end in a new world where death doesn't have the importance it used to, and what kind of punishment or consequence is this guy going to face that can actually match all of this, dramatic buildup? And I've been thinking about that just with the run in general, and this feels like such a specific, like well thought out, satisfying way to kind of cap this for now, while still not including death per se, but there's as we can see, there's some things that might be a whole lot worse from your perspective.
And also don't forget that they explicitly put Storm and Bobby Iceman on the Marauders team to protect Kate,
right?
And there's something there to be said, like they loved her, and maybe because she is also a vote for Emma, and Emma maneuver everyone to protect her.
But also, to what extent was she bait? Emma knew that Shaw wouldn't be able to resist somebody who it seemed like he could take out and not have resurrected. Like, it's a gamble, and Emma maybe she would or maybe she wouldn't, but you can't help but wonder.
And the fact that it could be any of those motivations, or maybe if all of them at once, kind of thing, is which makes this character so fun in the book.
Though I think it was seeded somewhere that Kate wasn't the first choice, wasn't Emma's first choice as the queen.
Yeah.
This all comes together in talking about a page that has a great layout. I really enjoyed this kind of like picture-in-picture lineup of all the votes from the Quiet Council. I wish they would do the votes like this more often, because sometimes I have a lot of trouble following who's voting in what order from which season. And here it actually was fun to watch. I like the kind of blurred out, backgrounds with the people that are missing. You could have done that last week instead of showing Jean on the council. And this is perhaps the first time that we had a vote right along gender lines, right up until Shaw comes in and votes no, because the council wants to know why Shaw has shown up in a wheelchair with an eye patch, looking quite picked. He's got quite a power to him, and you get the sense that Xavier and Magneto are voting yes because they're like the command and control types, and they just need to know. You get the sense that Sinister and Exodus are voting yes because, like, why not embarrass Shaw? And Mystique, recognizing that he comes in flanked by the three competent women from the other side of the council, votes no purely for her own amusement. So and Nightcrawler also, really is like the swing vote here.
Just to
Nightcrawler looks
mess with like Xavier and Magneto, because she's constantly using every opportunity to remind them that you guys owe me something.
I love that Nightcrawler mostly just looks confused. He's just like, I don't know what's happening, but let's just go with yes. But this was the best. This was the best council page in a long time, right? Like, this was the best interaction for me of all of those figures in that room, where it looks amazing it's got this decision in particular has so much weight, and it's just like it just feels exciting. Like it was just the best for me.
And I'm pretty sure Cypher and Krakoa knows, because the chair was missing. So Krakoa probably just absorbed the chair and left a blank space there.
That part's cold. They're like, "Where's the? Why is there no chair?"
Yeah.
And he comes in on a wheelchair.
Yes, I mean, just look at Doug's expression when they were voting. He looks angry,
It's a great Doug too. It reminds me of like 80s New Mutants Doug, just the way his face and his hair is drawn.
And this feels like the most transgressive in the context of the council any interaction has been so far, where these are now council members like openly harming and plotting against each other, and the votes kind of being pushed in one way or the other. And I think that's interesting after two members just left the council with the last few issues.
That's the end of the issue. But Tyler, what is the Krakoan language at the end of this issue?
What's coming?
And what is coming? This feels like the biggest plot thread that there was to wrap up. And Marauders, like, what's... I'm not a solicit reader, so I literally do not know. What is there left to do right now?
It feels like the end of the book in a way, or at least like the beginning of like the next stage.
Well, I mean, besides the Krakoan text, there's also this small box that says next, the lowtown lowdown. So they're probably dealing with the Verandi kids next. Yeah. So that'll be one thing.
And also a parting shot from Kate. Thanks for your gift, Sebastian. Yes. Which could be read a couple of different ways. What do you think? Quick round. What does gift refer to here, Tyler?
I would say probably letting her know that she's a mutant.
Yeah. That's it. He said earlier, he's like, I gave you your confidence back, basically. Yeah. And she's being petty, but in a sense, she has become much more realized than she did at the beginning of the book, for sure.
Yeah. I agree that that's what it is primarily, but I think there's also a certain acerbic remark about his eye in terms of a gift. I think there's also like kind of the gift of like going along with them, and almost in like air quotes, your gift. Like he's now formed a voting block with them that he didn't before. So I actually think it was pretty funny, because it's really just her getting it on him that they've got him in several different ways. Well, look, final thoughts on this Marauders issue before we wrap it up.
Good.
Good book.
I mean, it's really fun. I mean, it is really fun. It is really satisfying, as I've said, as I think all three of us have said that before. So I'm looking forward to see what the next chapter of Hellfire's and Hellfire's Gala.
No, I think this book has had a lot of interruptions and pacing issues, both in real world pandemics and a giant crossover. So you can kind of forget, but this is easily one of the top tier X books. And this is just this book, even though it seems kind of simple and measured, the fact that they have been working on all of these pieces and bringing them together issue to issue, and then it comes together like this and is so satisfying and has all of these interesting things on the margins and this interesting subtext, while also being this, to me, very beautiful issue. Like this is, it's back at the top of the pile. I don't see what's kind of around it right now.
Excellent. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us for this discussion of Marauders number 16. Look out for our other This Week in X episode this week, which will be discussing the debut of Sword. Or you can just hear everything all in one go on the Crushing Comics podcast, because that is our whole discussion with the little interstitial bits in between the issues as well. So on behalf of myself, of Tyler and Harry, we want to thank you so much for joining us for a little slice of This Week in X.
Bye.